Hi guys, it's Andy McDonald, physio and strength and conditioning coach, and welcome to the Informed Performance podcast. On today's show, I have Johnny O'Connor, a senior strength and conditioning coach at Connacht Rugby. Johnny is a Galway native who, interestingly, spent a number of years actually playing for Connacht Rugby. Following this professional spell as a sportsman, he worked at Arsenal Football Club before returning home to Connacht Rugby, which brings us to the present day and conversation as you'll hear now. Today's episode of the Informed Performance podcast has been sponsored by Vald Performance, makers of the Nordboard. The Nordboard has become the gold standard for assessing field-based hamstring strength. By combining advanced sensors, real-time data visualizations, and cloud analytics, the Nordboard helps practitioners to accurately measure, monitor, and train individuals' hamstring strength or imbalances. To learn more about the Nordboard, visit our sponsor, valdperformance.com. You're listening to the Informed Performance podcast with me, Andy McDonald, and here is today's episode between me and Johnny O'Connor. Johnny, welcome to the show. It's great to have you on, mate.
Listen, Andy, thanks a million. I'm looking forward to it and sharing a few stories of where I'm at in my career currently.
Just in case any of the listeners haven't yet stumbled across you in their career, would you be able to go through your background and within that, if you don't mind, touching upon your playing career as well, because that sets you apart for one of our guests, definitely.
I suppose where my interest became in my current job actually came from my playing career. And I played multiple sports in Ireland: rugby, soccer, Gaelic, and hurling, etc. But rugby is the one that kind of caught me and pulled me in and gave me a great opportunity in life. So I became a professional rugby player when I was around 19 years of age in Connacht, which is in the west of Ireland. And I spent 3 years there. And then I moved to London Wasps in 2003, 2007, which is another eye-opener for me in terms of what a great high-performance team looks like in an environment. It was a great place to be and great memories there, and spent 4 and a bit years there. And then I moved back to Galway to the west of Ireland, home, and played rugby till around 2013. Now, I suppose the interesting part about my career is I spent a significant portion of that on the sidelines, probably about 5.5 years at different stages. And it's allowing me to spend some time with some really, really good people and practitioners and people that cared. And I would have worked with Ben before when I ruptured my Achilles, and I've worked with Alan Ryan, Craig Wright, Des Ryan through different periods, and just build really good relations with these guys. And it's kind of just a stepping stone for me to realize that this is something I would like to go into when I stopped playing. So 2013, all the good things come to an end, and I suppose you're told that you're not wanted and you don't feel like chasing it anymore. So I was kind of finished playing rugby, and I had done my UKSA accreditation. I had done a degree in strength and conditioning, and Des Ryan, who had coached me before, had just started a job as the head of sports science in Arsenal Football Club. So through a conversation, he asked me to come over and interview for an internship. And I was 33 years of age, basically. I have 2 kids, and I said, I'll go and give it a try. And I managed to get that internship. And I said to my wife, well, sure, I suppose there's nothing else really going on. You know, I've got a year to kind of figure out what I want to do. So we went over there, and I stayed there for around 3.5 years. And then the opportunity to move back into rugby came, and I moved from Arsenal back to Connacht Rugby, and I've been here since. But I'm very fortunate in terms of getting the opportunities I had, and I think, you have a bit of an unfair advantage sometimes being an athlete, but I think there's a level of trust for me, and I think I have reasonably good character that's given me that opportunity, and I think I've been looked after very well by the mentors that helped me out and put me on the right path. So I'm still learning, and I'm still really enjoying my job, and I think I really enjoy helping athletes, I suppose, achieve their potential, and some of the hard and soft conversations around that sometimes are very fulfilling.
No, no doubt. And I'm not suggesting that you stand in the middle of the gym and share your war stories, but has it made a big difference, not only with the players, but also with the playing coaches? Does it give you, I guess, like a better use of, their language, their jargon, or any kind of rapport that you maybe wouldn't have if you weren't a player? Has it given you some advantages, do you think?
It possibly has, but I have to fully re-educate myself. Like the game has changed, and coming back into it, even for the 3 or 4 years I was gone out of it, like there was a lot of relearning for me, and what would have worked when I played it may not work now. But for me, I think there's a far better understanding from the players about the technical and tactical aspects of their job and how they can get better. And if they need to get better, there's more advice of what you actually need to do. And there is an advantage. I have good empathy with players when things go wrong, and you can see and feel from even like when you're talking to players about training load and they feel like the session has been too hard or too soft or whatever, that you can gauge with them and realize how to push them as well from being in their shoes, but at the same time really realizing that it's slightly different than it was previous. It does give you a bit of scope to have those conversations, and sometimes some of the experiences you've gone through, whether getting injured, getting dropped, going through periods where it's not going well for you, and there's certain ways you can in an environment react. And I think sometimes as an athlete, when you find you're in that circle and you're bitching about everything, you're probably in the wrong circle, and get the fuck out of it. Excuse my language, but I think it's very important for environment, for players to realise that doesn't help, and it's not congruent to actually finding success in an athletic career and dealing with the ups and downs. I think dealing with the coaches is excellent in terms, because I have a good understanding of the game and a good understanding of the technical and tactical standpoints. That doesn't mean we agree on everything all the time, but I can understand where they're coming from when they need more time. I understand where I have to cut back, and they give me maybe a bit more slack than maybe others do at times as well. So it does help. But at the same time, learning the overall function and what good training is, I'm very fortunate that I worked under some really, really good people, and the people I can bounce ideas off, and I have no problem ringing someone up and going, what do you think of the situation? How can we change this around to get the outcome we're looking for? So I think always looking to look outside as well sometimes, and just be able to share with people where you feel you're at and what your worries are. And I've just people that I trust that can do that with.
And how big's your department at the team? And the reason I ask is, I guess, what I'm curious to know, kind of as a part two to this question, is, do you have an interest in injuries? Because I know the S&C opportunity kind of presented itself to you initially, but obviously you could equally have an interest in injuries as a player that's carried an injury history yourself. I'm just wondering, do you how does your department, how's it organised, and then do you have an interest in injuries from an S&C perspective?
Oh, we would have done originally. So it's just kind of changed around over the last year and a half. So Dave Howard's our head of performance. Originally, I was looking after strength and power, and I was doing the rehabilitation weights and the runs and stuff like that. And then we had our sports scientist, Barry O'Brien, who worked after all the GPS data and stuff like that. But I think we kind of found over time that we needed to change and just get someone to look after that piece around rehabilitation. And look, I really enjoyed that part of it, and it's great for building relationships. It's really rewarding watching players come back. But ultimately, for us, we just changed around the overall structure. So we just let Barry just absolutely look after all the recon, and be looking after the weights, the running, liaising with the physios. We thought that was a better point of contact rather than spreading it across like three guys, one guy looking after weights, one guy looking after running. Now, I know that some departments do that, but we just found that it was going to be better for us in a smaller department to do that. This year we had another guy, Tom Brady, who was in on a Aspire graduate program for the last 11 months. So he took a bit of slack off in terms of running the GPS, but also was there to help out with weight sessions and setups, etc., etc. So at the moment, Dave kind of oversees things. I look after the strength and power, and I look after the pitch load with the coaches in terms of overall planning. So I think with a smaller department, sometimes you could have as many people as you want, but you can get that kind of collaboration inhibition where there's too many people making decisions. So it's an enjoyable place to work. It's a great place to get experience. And there's one thing I definitely say is I definitely feel really supported by the people I work with, so which is a good thing,
And for me, it's been over 10 years, I think now, since I've been in a professional rugby environment from a work capacity, definitely not from a playing capacity. And I'm selfishly really interested to know, how do you, as a department, or how do you as a coach, plan training through pre-season, and then maybe also through the season as well?
That's always fun, starting it off. We probably planned it slightly differently this year, although not revolutionary. But spent more time, because this is the first time I took over this role from last January, February onwards. So I had time to sit down and plan with the coaches, but really trying to get an understanding of what the field coaches were looking for. And yes, we use technology, but basing that as quality control to make sure we're delivering as planned. And I suppose when you sit with the coaches, you need to get an idea of, we've new coaches in this year, so they have new principles of play and how they want to play the game. And there's going to be typical scenarios they want to see in attack and defence, and allowing them to kind of set up sessions that will manipulate, I suppose, the constraints of any task to get like the desired behaviours they want to see. And with that, also we're asking, what are the limitations of the group of players we have, whether that be physical, technical, tactical, decision-making process. So deciding, what's the most important? And look at the higher level trained athlete we have, like we know the decision and tactical making, we define the outcomes we have on the pitch, and sitting with the coaches and breaking that down and talking about all the different things that can happen in a game, where that's entering contact, passing, carrying, stopping, kicking, cutting, and game relevant stuff. But we went through that kind of process of, what do you want? What's that look like? And then we kind of, how do we put that together? So stay with me here, Andy, now. But really simple starting off. Duration. So how long is practice? Because we know time on feet and too much of it can have a cause feet and related to injury, but it just, no one wants to spend too long on the pitch. So we've gone, we've lined out, what's the duration of a session? What's the duration of a fast session? What's the duration of a long session? What's the speed of that session? What's the density of that session? Is there most rest in that? What's the space? Are we working in closed spaces, big space? And then what's the level of contact? Because obviously we play a collision sport. I'm trying to working that and building that up. And this is particularly for the pre-season and building into in-season. And from that, given descriptives, we can have a session with control. We can have control and speed. We can add speed, fatigue, and pressure. And then at the end, we had a kind of title of edge work. So I went through all this with the coaches, but like the number kind of one thing I asked them is at the end of pre-season, we said, what session will challenge the players both physically and mentally and help deliver the desired behaviours and rugby outcomes to be successful. So looking at that session, what does that look like and how can we build that? Because we don't just want a session with great physical outputs without delivering on the desired rugby behaviours and outcomes, because we need those to be successful. So we went down and started with that, and then we said, we can work back from this and build up to this over a 4-week period. Now, our players, in terms of coming off COVID and not really been able to go on holidays, you give them a nice body of work and they'd actually get it done. So when we came in, we were in a really, really good position to start. And we just build from week 1 in terms of starting off with our duration, which is between 45 to 60 minutes, and then we had our density, which is 1 to 3, and we worked on small game-based stuff. And we had conditioning runs because we weren't to cover longer distance because we weren't getting that from the games, and conditions were just control and speed. It still was a level of fatigue there, and then we'd move to week 2 and the same timings, but that density comes down, moderate games, speed and pressure, and then that week 3 was 40 to 50 minutes, and you got moderate to large spaces and speed, fatigue, pressure. And then the last week we build up to that week 4 is the one we defined, it's 30 to 40 minutes. There is no fat, there's no transitions, it's just run, small, large game based conditioning drills. And we're really trying to push into the edge work way beyond game demands, but something beyond that you go, God, that is the hardest session I've done in my life. And the way we structured that in pre-season was just a relatively high-low model. For the first 4 weeks we went Monday, busy days, rugby first in the morning, then units, clarity, skills, and individual or position specific stuff. So Monday we go pretty hard, Wednesday would be moderate to hard, and Friday would be hard. Tuesdays and Wednesdays would be recovery days. We did those for the first 4 weeks, and we just found we got more out of it. Rather than have a low day and a Monday and then a high day and a Tuesday and a Wednesday off, we just got way more quality work out of our players. And in terms of our own strength as well, we got a lot more recovery and seemed to get better bounce back off till we moved into it. And that was the pre-season. I think in season then is, I suppose, has been as adaptable as you can when you get there, because things change, and the biggest thing that changes is the game load, whether that's collision, running load, and types. And we have a relatively, I suppose, we have 44 players, but with players out injured over that, we have a relatively small pool of players to pick from. So a lot of time we're asking a lot of players to play again. So slightly different how we manage that, but it's just paying attention to those really kind of acute things from a game sense and making changes. If there's a massive amount of collisions in a game and lads come in battered, then that the contact load is obviously significantly just taken out of the session that week, and just reacting to that, and then just changing the variance on time and duration and intensity throughout the week. And that's the reality. That's how we've worked it at the moment. A bit of a long answer, but I think it's been rewarding because we've had significantly lower amount of injuries in pre-season than we've had previous, and we're always pretty good, to be fair, but it's just knocking another 15-20% off it, which is good. I think we got it right. So, and our players have been in a good spot.
No, it's good to hear, and I think I personally like how you started by kind of describing how you design your program around the task demands of how your playing coaches and the makeup of your team in terms of playing style, how you design it around that versus just kind of treating rugby as this blanket design for a program. I think that's good to hear. What I'm curious about, running alongside that, how does monitoring and data feed into that system? Through pre-season, whether it's on field or whether it's in the gym.
In terms of the on-field stuff, I think it's overall planning, and we'll look at our loads kind of coming into it. To be honest, the first 4 weeks I reckon we had it planned pretty well. That was using just to go back and check on, okay, is anything obscure in terms of his way out of what we thought it would be? And we really feel comfortable how we build it. So we're just keeping track of that. Are we going up? Are we getting up to the bandwidth we want to get to? What's our chronic exposures like? What's our acute exposures like? And making sure that we're not anything outside of the ordinary. But we're relatively happy with that because I think we planned well. And then when we get in season, it just becomes more and more important because those bandwidths become more variable. Because essentially, if you get your planning right, this is less of a reliant tool. We would utilize, in terms of like Dave Howard, who's the head of performance here, he's doing his PhD through using force decks. A lot of his work is through that, and a lot of jump variables that Dave is able to identify and make changes. But overall, like, the variables that you have to pay attention to come within season, like, unless the lads haven't done the work coming in, and we stated like, yeah, they come in and you're ready to go, guys, at the start of pre-season, or else you're just going to get hurt because we can't wait for you. So and we had good compliance when we explained that. So in terms of using technology, it's at the start, at the front end, we use it, but we use it just basically to make sure we're on track. It's not something that's front and center of our program. I think Dave does a lot more on it, but we try and make it not too much of an over focus for the players. Overall, we'll have our monitoring day to day in terms of filling out your questionnaires when you come in, and we'll do our jumps in season. We would do it on Tuesday and a Thursday, just seeing how the players are responding just before they come into games. But other than that, we're pretty good in terms of, we still have all the other testing and databases in terms of like our NORBoard groin squeezes and physical tests as well, in terms of identifying where players need to go.
I mean, I think that stuff's become part and parcel with professional environments now, hasn't it? Rather than being a stylistic difference, I think it's become the standard to use that stuff.
It has. It's just, I think, this is sometimes you get so tied up in it. So I made a conscious decision to not get too tied up in it this pre-season. And you can talk yourself into a corner. So I consciously said, I'm going to back the plan we came up with, and I'm just going to keep track of it. And then as I spoke to Dave, I said, if you see anything like obscene that's coming out and we've gone way over or making this jump, just let me know. And we didn't come to that at all. So that's just the case. I just wanted to see if I could go with this program as a bit of a trial, and rightly or wrongly, it worked for us anyway, certainly from a pre-season sense. I think it's just sometimes you restrict yourself and become so reductionist in the sense of using data sometimes, and you can always find a story somewhere to tell you to stop and slow down. But I felt we really needed to push the players to an edge, and we, as I said, we had that endpoint we wanted to get to in week 4, and we got there in relatively one piece, and we think we reaped the benefits of it from a short pre-season. Because that's it. Basically, you've got a break then, and you got week 6 and then 7, you're playing pre-season games, and then the roundabouts, the merry-go-round starts again.
One of the things that I really wanted to talk to you about, and I think it's one of your interests, I think if I'm right in saying, and it's definitely something that I share with you in that sense, is the use of heavy eccentrics during pre-season. Would you be able to shed some light on this? Maybe if we start with, why you like to use them during pre-season first, and then I'll probe you for kind of how the dosage and maybe the progressions of later. So in the first instance, why do you like them?
Overall, I think there's bang for your buck. Like those pre-seasons are becoming inherently shorter, and I've kind of a bit of a story in terms of how I got there. But there's lots of pros and cons to be considered when using eccentric trainings. But they can strongly influence other training units. But and you need to be careful how to create a positive impact in performance. You can't just go for it. But for me, I think it's almost the holy grail, because it's a really good way of moving that force velocity curve upwards and to the right if you get it right with the particular athletes. And if I can tell you, Andy, how I kind of started with it, and we don't have to go through all the different properties of things that change, whether that's faster contrite properties or numbers of sack moves in Syria. But for me, basically, as I was working in recon, first part of my job, I was working an individual who had broken his thumb, was going to be out for 12 weeks. And I was sitting with Dave and I was going, he's one of these very kind of floppy athletes, and what are we going to do to him? Because there's a lot you can do when you have a broken thumb, to be honest, and your lower limb is good to go. And we just identified, so visually you could tell he's kind of floppy, lacks relative stiffness, and we can't get, does the jumps tell that, Dave? And Dave went, okay, look at his EDF, these eccentric deceleration rate for him. Yeah, he doesn't have good stiffness levels, although that may be mechanical properties, but yeah, that shows that. So we decided to intro super maximal training with him over a 3-week period, and some of the changes for someone and the things I worried about, are we going to burn him? Is he going to be sore? None of those happened, but his rebound was pretty significant after 2 or 3 weeks. Jump heights changed significantly and upward trend. His speed changed. Now, there was other variables that happened in the program. We did have 12 weeks and we did work in acceleration mechanics, but at the same time, the jump variables, so you saw a massive change in ED, RFD early on, and then you saw a change in jump height and concentric impulse, and all those things shifted up. And it sounds like, as I said when I chatted to Dave about it, I was only chatting again today about it. It sounds too good to be true, but it worked for this athlete. So if you have a floppy kind of athlete that needs to increase stiffness and spring, then certainly it makes a big difference. But that just led me to running that across the squad the following season for everybody, and we saw big changes in lean mass. We saw some people respond really well. We saw some people not respond too well and took a bit long to recover in terms of that concentric impulse and things driving up. So there is an effect on that. But we got to our third year, which is this year, and we kind of identified the guys that we felt would need it from jump data, and identifying, okay, well, if someone's already got good stiffness qualities, then what's the point? You're probably increasing the risk and making that spring almost too tight. You won't get any bounce back off it or any spring back off it. So that's where we ended up with it. And I think it's been really, really rewarding. I find it interesting. And that's only one component of it, but it makes a big difference to our program. And it's something we'll utilize again, but been a bit more specific in who we apply it to.
And how do you kind of bridge into it? How do you, what's your kind of intro into eccentric, rep sets, dosage? How do you kind of build into it for an athlete?
During we had more kind of tempo sets before they come in off the break, so those last 2 weeks before they come in. So we want to get into it on week one, so we'll just have more controlled sets of 3 to 5 seconds down at sub-maximal loads between 80 and 85, just controlling that down. But once we've gone through that period, we'll have a 2 to 3 week period, depending. We had 3 weeks this year, so we'd have just a warm-up set at sub-maximal weights, and then we'd have 2 sets at 2 reps at between 110 and 120% of 1RM. And we just have a nice controlled 7-second eccentric, and then we'll get the lads to help them back up and re-rack the bar for 10 to 20 seconds, and then we'll do our second set. And we'll do that on a Monday, and we'll do that on a Friday, and basically all of the program is relatively the same. But that's how we've got to it. It is kind of scary when you have lads that are quite strong, and we set the kind of range between 110 120. Some lads got to 120, some didn't. But in terms of the kickback from it, and I'm doing my finishing my masters on this, and this is kind of a component of my thesis, but like certainly for us, like this preseason, yeah, players definitely got stronger, but like the levels of fatigue weren't as high as the lads that were doing the concentric and eccentric up down phase, ascending descending phase. Like, so there is, I think, relatively in terms of bang for your buck and energy expenditure, there is something in it, but that's anecdotal from my point of view. But I think from just working with guys, I think it's a nice way to get heavy loads for people and look at the adaptation you get, whether they're in euro or there's changes in fascicle length or whatever it is, even tendon health, increasing collagen content within the muscle. I think it's hugely rewarding. There's so much you can get from it in such a short period, and I don't know if traditional strength training can do that.
Whether kind of anecdotal or whether evidence based, have you been able to sort of highlight or find out from your own experience how long it takes to get, say, the neural adaptation from an eccentric versus how long it's taken you to get the structural changes? Have you, because obviously you don't always get tons of time in pre-season, have you been able to kind of identify which players are getting which type of adaptation?
Well, from the muscle adaptation, like in terms of greater hypertrophy, is really because lads just put on weight, and but in terms of overall the adaptation in terms of stiffness, you'll see a change in EDR or eccentric deceleration rate for pretty quickly, but you may see that concentric part take longer to come back up in certain individuals. Now, it's very hard to say, like 8-9 weeks, someone all of a sudden starts to jump in higher. And like, I know all it is a jump, but you start to see that concentric and with that concentric rate of force developed all start to go up. So people's jump height starts to increase. And you can tie that to the eccentrics because it does decrease during that period. And then all of a sudden it does come back up and go above. But like there's other things happen in the program at that stage as well. Like we moved over to more kind of contrast models of French contrast or complex or contrast within the program those last couple of weeks of training before we go into the start of the competition period. So it can be a slow burner for some guys, but I still think there's a reward, even like if you get those basic changes of sarcomeres and Assyria, and you're adding those and increased fascicle length. And there's some suggestions like that, sarcomeres and Assyria series has an effect on contraction velocity, and that can't be a bad thing. And fascicle length, there's a correlation, there's a study in terms of sprints, with sprint performance, and although it doesn't define between good or elite sprinters, like it's not a bad thing. It's going to help with performance, and it's just identifying the individuals, which Dave has been really, really good with in terms of, okay, this guy will respond well to this. These guys will be neutral, but it will help. And then these guys don't touch in terms of, if you do this, probably risk the chance of injury. Because yes, we know stiffness is good and compliance is good and all those, but too much is not a good thing.
And do they take any space in the program in season? Because I know, some people in season will in, say, football or soccer, and also in rugby, some people will sometimes implement, very minimal dosage sort of Nordics or minimal dosage eccentric work. Do you still build some eccentrics into the in-season program?
There'll always be Nordics anyways in the program, or some sort of knee dominant hamstring stuff that would demand that. But in terms of acutely put in it, I would put in one or two players like that. They'd be kind of your players that are kind of more floppy, that just kind of soft and landing and just dampening in terms of ground contacts. That can help them really quickly and they respond quickly to it. I've done that with them when we have a break. We have a break coming up, so there's a couple of guys that will do a block of eccentrics, super maximal eccentrics. But overall for the squad, I haven't just gone down that way, so I can't really say rightly or wrongly would it make a difference. It's just I'm comfortable enough going with the other stuff. But would I be comfortable enough recommending to do it? I would, but it's taken us a while to get there. To one, builds, I suppose, the confidence and the rapport with the players to ask them to go and do it. So players are happy to do it because there is a bit of strain on it. But as I said, I don't think it takes that much out of you. Like if you get it on the right guy, like, and it's the intervention is for the right athlete.
And I guess at the end of the day, over the macro, over the full calendar year of training, you're still getting a very concentrated dose of it for a good sort of adaptation purpose. Within the grand scheme of your program, it's not necessarily something you don't need to hit all things all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. You don't like it's just when we need a bit of a spike. So when we have like at this, the way the competition schedule is worked this way, we're off. We play tomorrow, and then we've got 5 weeks off. So there's a nice development window there, but you don't want to try and go crazy with it either. Like, there's still rugby, so it's not this great S&C block of physical. We want to get better at rugby, and there's things we need to work on. So you need to make space for that. So you can't be over selfish and go like, okay, I'm going to have this massive eccentric block here. Now I'm going to get this spike in about 6 or 7 weeks' time. We'll all be flying through the roof, and our power and stuff will have gone up. But an ideal world, you're compromising certain things. So I'm not prepared to do it yet because I don't know, like people's jump height when it goes lower. Some people just feel like it's a psychological, and for athletes, obviously, who are competitive, they worry about those things. So maybe it's not something you want to put in within season, but they can deal with it when you say, look, give me 8 to 10 weeks, and you start to see your jump height go up. And for a large proportion of the squad, that would happen. I know it's only jump height. That's only one thing, but it does help psychologically for whatever reason, along with like acceleration as well. But we do a lot of heavy sled work as well, also within season. So there's obviously transfers through that in terms of acceleration work. So it's not just eccentrics, but
yeah. I feel like as well, a lot of players obviously get injured as well during a season. So depending on what their injury is and what the limitations are, if it was, a thumb or an upper body based injury, there's no reason why you can't build some significant lower body eccentric work into their program. You just can't necessarily plan ahead for it. You need to kind of take those opportunities when they're injured. You can't, map that out ahead of time.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's when the opportunity presents itself. Now, it depends how strong someone is. Like, is it going to make a difference? But I think ultimately, if we're looking at some of the adaptations, that in terms like we think of it as a strength and getting stronger, that can be. There's nothing bad about getting stronger, but ultimately, like the eccentric strength isn't just about just getting stronger. We're looking at the changes in terms of can we push that force velocity curve up and to the right, and the different changes that can happen structurally that will help with that. And we know like there's loads of research around tendon health, et cetera, in terms of like where's the base and therapeutic work around that. Like that there's so many good things about eccentrics outside of the performance aspect as well also. Like, so it's just for me, it's something that will stay in my program for evermore at the moment until something changes. But at the moment, I think it's a great way to utilize in terms of performance and health, and I think it gives the players a bit more longevity if you get it right.
Johnny, I'm aware of time today. I know you've got a busy time, probably work-wise now and moving forwards. Where's the best place for people to follow you online?
You can follow me on Twitter. It's at Johnny JOHNNYOC7. Follow more of my likes, to be honest. And if anyone wants to contact me in terms of talk further and what I've shared, I'm happy to do so. So there's no panic. I actually don't know if I tweet anything. I haven't tweeted in a while, but I'm more of kind of like and follow and regurgitate the information that's out there.
Cool. Perfect. Well, mate, thank you very much for coming on today's show. And yeah, it's been good to meet you over the internet, and also just good to chat today.
Cheers, man. Thanks a million, Andy. Thank you.
Big thanks to Johnny for coming on the show and sharing both his story and also some technical insights on how he practices as a coach. We recently hosted our first live event, which was a course on the sporting hand and wrist with Ian Gatt from GB Boxing. If you're a medical professional or a physio and would like to upskill on the hand and wrist, then head over to our education page on informperformance.com, where you can find our sporting hand and wrist series. Don't worry if you missed part 1, you can now find the recording of that first event for you to enjoy in your own time, also giving you time to catch up before part 2 in January. As I said, head over to informperformance.com to find our courses, where you can also find articles and previous podcast episodes. I hope you enjoyed today's episode of the Informed Performance Podcast. Catch us next time for more performance and sports medicine insights.